As you can see, it's really important for us to build a diverse community here with the dedoc voices and also in the wider diabetes community. And diversity is one of the topics that we're going to speak about next. So our next guest is a man of many talents. He's a podcaster, he's an advocate, he's a stand-up comedian. I'm talking about Chelcie Rice, and he will be speaking about racial disparities in the medical system in the US. So welcome, Chelcie.
Thank you, Steffi. So good to see you. Wish it was in person. Had too much fun in Berlin meeting you all. Hello to everyone from dedoc. You guys have truly changed my life for the better. So good morning and good evening.
That is so lovely to hear, and I can only give that right back to you. It was great to have you with us in Berlin as well, and amazing to know you as part of our dedoc family and the network. So you're here to talk about medical disparities, and specifically about the fact that it is a different experience if you live with diabetes in the US and you're Black. And maybe some people in the audience will be wondering, why is that? And how is that possible? How in 2023, a nation like the US, why are there racial disparities like this?
Right. And that was one of the things that I guess I noticed when I was in Berlin, that there seemed to be, and it wasn't something that anyone had said to me directly. It was just a feeling that I got that there would seem to be a misconception about, because either I'm an American or Americans are thought to have had so much access to healthcare and other opportunities to better take care of their condition, whether it's diabetes, cancer, whatever, that there are no obstacles for us to be able to attain the treatments that we need to better manage our condition. And it's just not the case, because the United States has a long history of marginalism, basically marginalizing people of color, whether it be Native Americans, African American slaves that came to this country, the Jewish community. Good enough to get diabetes. It was thought to be just a Jewish condition, because they thought that Jewish people were more had more anxiety, they were just stressed out, and apparently they thought that Black people were just so happy-go-lucky, which is kind of my twisted sense of humor. Is I can't see anyone being that happy-go-lucky being a slave. So it's that was the whole mindset. And so when you don't think a person even is even able to get that condition, so it just goes ignored. And so this was a systemic problem that was almost basically created. And when I say systemic, when it comes to marginalized people in the United States and when it comes to people of color, a lot of people seem to think, well, that was a long time ago. That has nothing to do with today, which is not the case, because everything that was done back then, whatever was done to my great grandfather, as far as him not having the right to vote, him not being able to live where he wanted to, him not being able to go to a restroom where he wanted to, him not being able to obtain wealth so he can pass it down to my grandfather, so my grandfather could have passed it down to my father, so my father could have passed it down to me. All that was done to my great grandfather, that was intended to affect me
Today in 2023.
today in 2023. Exactly. So that was all done to prevent me from having wealth, or to having my father be able to pass something down, whether it be land or just money, or stocks and bonds, anything of that nature was prevented from people like me from having that wealth today. And so the same thing happens with health, in a sense, because when you ignore a person's condition, obviously you're not even treating them as a human being. And so these are the things that get passed down. You know, African Americans were oftentimes experimented on. Even as women, they were experimented on without anesthesia during the days of slavery. Fast forward to say 1970, there were people of color being experimented on in the penal system. So these things are deep rooted into the fabric of America, so to speak. So that was the main thing that I want to hopefully get, especially folks from other countries, to understand.
Mhm.
It's not all that it seems in this
Mm.
country. For instance, we've gotten to the point where the insulin companies have lowered the out of pocket price for insulin, which is great. Why does it
Mhm.
take a lifetime to do the right thing? I don't know, but that's, you know, but
Conversation for another day. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So the next step is, how do we get that information to the marginalized communities? How do we get this information to the
Mm.
Native American communities that aren't being thought about, period, as it pertains to diabetes and their health? So that's the next step, because I think right now, even with that particular instance, we're kind of okay now, going like, okay, now what? We fought to get the insulin prices down, so now what? Well, the now what is to get the information to the communities that never had
Mhm.
that didn't have access to it, or just don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit more about what it looks and feels like to live with diabetes in the US, specifically as a Black person?
Historically, when I speak of like the experiments that were done at Tuskegee and throughout history, that builds a distrust, because this is
Mhm.
something I said during one of the sessions at dedoc. Medical professionals, whether they're nurses, nurse practitioners, doctors, they are seen as a member of authority, the same way a policeman is. So right offhand, we think, okay, well, whatever they say goes. I don't question what they say. I just take whatever they, or whatever they prescribe to me, or whatever information they give me, and I just take that to heart. I don't question. I don't ask questions about something that may not affect me, because we see them as a member of authority. We don't understand oftentimes in the communities that are marginalized that we're the ones with the power. If the doctor's not providing me the information that I want, that he's not, that if there's something that he prescribed for me that doesn't make me feel well, fire him. And so this is what happens when in marginalized communities, because they're under the impression that they don't have any power, which is part of the systemic.
Mhm.
You convince a person that they have no power, then you have power over them. This is the whole process. And so where we need to turn the corner is providing this information to these communities to reprogram, in a sense, that you do have power to better take care of yourself as it pertains to your health care. And so, like I said, it's oftentimes in America we see it as like, we've got everything, access to this, that, and the other, and there are countries that are much more poor than the United States. I understand
Mhm.
that, and sympathize and empathize with that, but all is not what it seems here. You know,
Yeah.
you know, there's the grass over here is just as full of crabgrass and clover as it is anywhere else. It's just not shown.
Yeah. I guess one good thing is that this topic is starting to gain traction and that there's actually research being done into this specific thing, also with regards to diabetes. So there is research that clearly shows that Black people and people of color in the US are less likely to be prescribed newer medicines, insulin pumps, CGMs, or have access to that, because of course there's a financial element there as well within the US system, and same goes for likelihood of DKA, being hospitalized with severe lows as well. So Black people and people of color are more likely to end up in hospital with these complications as well, and also more likely to develop complications, which we're going to talk about more later as well. But
Right.
there is research that shows that this is a fact, but people still find it hard to actually see that, right?
Right, exactly. And one of the things that you spoke about is that the information that is provided to these patients, say whether it be information about a pump, to look into a pump, or look into comes from physicians who have a bias. They look at the patient and say, well, you know, they don't seem to have a whole lot of education. So if I tell them this, they're probably not going to understand it.
Mm.
So they just give them whatever, or they tell them whatever, but just based on the fact that they don't think that they're going to either understand it, or they've labeled them as non-compliant, and then they don't want to provide them with that information that they need, giving no consideration that
Mhm.
they may understand, or that you can take the moment to educate them.
Yeah, absolutely. We see similar issues in different countries, also in Germany to a certain extent as well. And I can see in the comments that people, for example, from South Africa can really relate to that as well.
Right.
And we've been talking a lot about or you and me, we have the type 1 perspective, but speaking about the majority of people with diabetes, of course, this also comes into play when we're thinking about type 2 diabetes and how it's treated, how the risk can be reduced, but it's easier said than done, especially if you are part of a marginalized community. Can you
Right.
tell me a little bit about that as well? Sharing
Yeah.
from your peers with type 2?
Yes. I mean, I know so many people with type 2, and there seems to be a heavy marketing of pharmaceuticals to people with type 2. I don't know if any of you had an opportunity to even remotely watch any American television, but you constantly see there's a I guess there's a blueprint for
Mhm.
how they portray people with type 2 on television. They're either older, overweight, people of color, and that's the way they market these pharmaceuticals to type 2s. And to me, I wish there was always about how to, better eating choices, exercise,
Mhm.
as opposed to filling yourself with these commercials about here's another pharmaceutical, here's another drug that you can try, here's something else you can ask your doctor about. And it just seems to be a cycle. The next pill coming down the pike is going to at some point be on television. I mean, I'm thankful for the fact we've got Dexcom and Libres on television for folks with type 1, but now they're being taken over by folks that don't even have diabetes,
True. Yeah.
asking for prescriptions for a Dexcom. It's like, you know, and that hurts because that attention gets taken off the folks with type 2 and type 1,
Mm. Yeah,
because
agreed.
the civilians are thinking that it's just something that they can just, play around with now.
Yeah. Okay, Chelsea, one final quick question. Is there something for people out there in the audience watching right now, one thing that they can do specifically to support Black folks with diabetes or people of color in general?
Right. The most that I can really provide is a suggestion, is listen. Whenever people with a chronic condition speak out about something that's bothering them, that they don't understand, that is bothering, that is hurting them, all you have to do is listen. Maybe empathize with them, put yourself in their position. Because this is one of the things about
Yeah.
the diabetes online community. There's a unity because we're all unified by this condition. It breaks barriers, racial barriers, all of that. Because if you take the time to listen and to respect another person's point of view or their voice, then this goes for people of color, the trans community, the gay community, all of it. All you have to do is listen. You don't have to, if you don't feel like going out in the streets and marching, that's fine. But if you're not one for petitioning, fine. All we ask, anybody should ask, is just that you listen and then
Very
educate
wise
yourself.
words.
Don't sit there and buy whatever's being shoved down the pike. Just listen and
Yeah.
empathize.
And that's exactly why we invited you here today, so that we could listen to you. And I can see from the comments that this topic really resonates with a lot of people. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing all that with us
Thank
today.
you. Thank you all for having me. I love you all, and I hope to see you all soon.
Right back at you. See you soon.